Does anybody else out there like Star Trek? I know I do. I was just watching an episode and I was reminded of a quote that I love. The quote was from Cary Grant, and it says this: "I pretended to be somebody that I wanted to be until I became that person, or he became me." Cary Grant is just chock full of wisdom. You know what else he was chock full of? Good tea. Maybe you've heard that phrase before, that term, imposter syndrome, especially for us creatives that are making stuff and we're trying to put our art out into the world. Sometimes we can feel like we're imposters, like we have no right to be doing what we're doing. We love doing it, but there's people that are way better at it than we are. And I think, as the late, great Cary Grant said, we're all trying to figure it out. You see, imposter syndrome is this internal experience that we have where we believe that we're a fraud, that we have no business doing what we're doing because we're not qualified enough, we're not skilled enough. Often it comes with self-criticism, fear of failure, and feeling inauthentic. Listen, guys, if that's you, it is so important for you to overcome imposter syndrome. And listen, unlike Cary Grant, I don't think that we have to pretend to be something that we're not necessarily. I think we have to attain to who we can be. And listen, guys, this is going to unlock your potential. We're looking at increased mental health, increased creative output. We're going to be able to live more authentically. And this is ultimately going to lead to you being able to share your gifts with the world. This is going to be so impactful, guys. If you want to learn how to overcome imposter syndrome, please stick with me. All right, so the definition of imposter syndrome is this. Imposter syndrome is a psychological condition characterized by persistent doubt about one's abilities and accomplishments, and the fear of being exposed as a fraud. People with imposter syndrome often feel anxious and don't experience success internally despite being high-performing in external ways. They may believe that they are not as competent or intelligent as others might think, and that people will discover the truth about them. And so maybe here's some things that you're kind of dealing with. Self-doubt, intense fear of failure, afraid that people are going to see that your success is a sham, perfectionism that causes you to agonize over mistakes, constantly seeking external validation, and this is hindering your creative output. Maybe you have thoughts that the only reason why you've gotten to where you're at is because of luck and not because you have the skill to do it. Maybe you're stressed, you don't feel confident. Maybe you feel super anxious when you have new opportunities. Maybe you're someone who delays finishing projects because they're just not good enough. They're not perfect enough yet. Maybe you have a hard time promoting yourself and your work. And when people say, "Man, this is awesome, we love it," on the inside, you're thinking, I don't think they're seeing what I'm seeing. Maybe you feel like you are constantly in competition with other creative people in your industry. I mean, I get that it's a competitive thing, but maybe you feel like you are constantly comparing yourself in a not good way. And this is all leading to you not being able to appreciate your accomplishments. You feel inauthentic, and you're afraid of being exposed as being less talented than other people, or less talented than other people think that you are. And guys, this is all over the place. You can be an actor and feel like you have no business doing what you're doing. You're standing there in front of everybody, in front of the rest of the cast, and you are just trying your best to not get crushed under the pressure. Or maybe you're a musician or a music artist and you just can't bring yourself to put your music out there or go perform live, all because you're afraid that it's not good enough. You could be an animator or an artist or a director or a filmmaker. It doesn't matter what you do. This is something that goes all over the place. And the reason for that is because it starts with fear in here. And so let's talk about some causes and some contributors to what you're feeling. Number one, perfectionism. Excellence is excellent. Perfectionism is an excuse. I may be stepping on some of y'all's toes out there, but trust me, you need to hear it. Excellence is excellent, but perfectionism is an excuse. What do I mean by that? Well, perfectionism is this desire to make things seem more perfect than you actually are. Now, am I saying that we shouldn't polish things? Of course not. We need to polish things. But when we get so focused in on small details that are stopping us from moving forward, It's an excuse. Here's another way to put it. Perfectionism contributes by desiring unrealistic readiness before attempting growth. That means you're trying to give the appearance of you're up at this level, but really you're at this level. And am I saying that we shouldn't try to get to this level? Of course not. But you've got to be realistic with where you are as well. Here's another cause or something that contributes to this feeling of imposter syndrome, and that is narrow definitions of success. What I mean by that is that you have such a narrow definition of success that you are hardly ever succeeding. If I'm a music artist and I'm trying to release music, a narrow definition of success would be, I will only have succeeded if I put out an album and 10 million people listen to my album or buy it or whatever. It's not a bad goal. Or let's put it another way. If I'm a singer and I have a narrow definition of success, then I'm thinking, I'm only going to be successful at singing if I sound like this person or if I have the vocal range of this person. Having narrow definitions of success limits our ability to be able to enjoy where we are at in the process. It stops us from really being able to celebrate the successes that we're making along the way. Another cause or contribution to our imposter syndrome can be childhood experiences, can be personality factors. See, when we are insecure about ourselves because of how our personality is, because of how we grew up and how we've responded to circumstances in our lives, it can really exacerbate these imposter thoughts. For a long time, I was an extremely insecure person, and I was constantly thinking about what other people thought about me. And I believe that God set me free from that, and I haven't been the same since. We cannot live our lives worrying about what other people think about all the time. When we do that, we put ourselves into a prison. And when you put yourself into a prison and you're stressed and anxious about what other people think about you all the time, it is going to break you down. It's going to break down your creativity. It's going to break down your joy. You're not going to enjoy your life very much. Another really big, important thing is fear of failure and negative self-talk. This is going to keep pushing your face into the dirt when you're already feeling like an imposter. Listen, all of these things, all of these creative jobs, all of these things that we're trying to do require risk. And when we have to take a step of risk and we're already in an anxious position, it's so easy to feel like we're an imposter, like we don't belong there. And if we're not watching over our negative self-talk, listen, it is going to drive you in the ground. Just think about this. So many people out there have been bullied and they hear people say negative things about them all the time. But sometimes the biggest bully that we face is ourself. And there is a difference between being really realistic with yourself and helping yourself to grow and speaking negative self-talk over yourself. There is a big difference. And these things may be tearing you down into pieces to where you can't even make or release or do any of the things that you want to creatively. Okay, so how do we fix this? Where does it all begin? How can we begin to change from where we are with all of this anxiety and fear? How can we even begin to change? Maybe some of you guys have thought that before. I just feel stuck. I can't get anywhere. If that's you, one of the first things that we need to do is talk about envisioning your future self. Many of you guys may not know this, but for years I smoked cigarettes. And over and over and over again, I tried to quit. It's the age-old story, but I tried and nothing was working. And as you know, I'm a Christian, and so I'm praying and I'm talking to God about this. And I say, God, I don't know what's going on. I cannot quit. But I had this faith in my heart that God could help me overcome this. And so I said, God, why can I not quit? I've tried everything. And he did something that I will never forget. He said, you want to be a dad, right? And I was like, well, yeah, of course. And he said, okay, what kind of dad do you want to be? Do you want to be this kind of dad? And then he showed me a picture of what it would be like for me to have kids and to continue to smoke, and the example that I would be setting for them of what's okay and the legacy that that would leave inside of their lives. And then he showed me a picture of me being free from the addiction of smoking cigarettes. and the impact that that would have on my children. And I said, well, I want to be that guy. I want to be the guy that doesn't smoke cigarettes, of course. And then God asked me the most profound question. He said, when are you going to stop being who you are now? And when are you going to become that guy? And I was like, whoa. All of a sudden I started making excuses, but ultimately I said, I want to start becoming that person now. We have to see ourselves walking out the life that we want to walk in, and then we have to become that person. Now, am I saying that we should be somebody different than we are? To some degree, yes. As children, we're born and we don't have much understanding, and we don't understand ourselves and the world around us very well. We develop weird thoughts about ourselves, about others, incorrect thoughts. But as we get older, hopefully, we mature. We become stronger. We become more loving. We become more compassionate, gracious, talented, skillful, creative. But here's the thing. We have to see that person that we want to be before we step in front of the mirror. We have to see that person up here and here. And then we have to decide something really important. When will I start being that person? When am I going to stop being who I am now? And when am I going to become that person? No more excuses. No more delays. When will I become that person? And when we can say, I'm going to become that person today, things are going to start to change. And it's really important for us to be able to visualize that person. I'll never forget a story that somebody told me a while ago about a man who was a war prisoner. And this guy was a golfer, except for one thing. He was not very good at golfing. But every day when he'd wake up in his cell, he would envision playing a perfect game of golf over and over and over again. Every day, all 18 holes, perfect game of golf. And you know what's amazing? When he was rescued and brought back home, he went to that golf course that he imagined every day. And as the story goes, he played a perfect game of golf. Now, I don't know how true that is, but it speaks to the power of visualizing and having that vision in your head. It's so important for us as people to have a picture of what the future looks like, to have a picture of what is before us, and where we want to go and where we need to go. And so am I saying be fake? No, I want you to be you. I want you to be the unique person that you are. But I need you to recognize that you are not the perfect version of who you are or who you can be. And that there's more to you that is hidden beneath the surface. And I want you to imagine what it would be like for you to be successful in what you love to do. What would it look like for you to be the best animator? What would it look like for you to be the best musician? What would it look like for you to be the best actor that you can be? And I want you to not picture somebody else. I want you to picture you doing what you love at an extremely high level. And then get that image stuck in your head, okay? This is the start of all of this. If you don't have a clear picture of where you're going, you are going to go back into your old habits. You're going to start thinking the same things that you were thinking before. And let me just tell y'all, there may be relapses. You may fall back into old ways of thinking, but we've got to use strategies to help keep us on track even when that happens. And so now I want to talk about some strategies for change so that you can become a creative monster, an artistic beast, so that you can do the things that you believe that you are supposed to do. Number one thing is that we need to reframe the negative talk. I want you to pay very close attention to the negative words that you say to yourself. You might not even realize that you're doing it, to be completely honest. Sometimes our thoughts race by so fast and we're so caught up in our emotions that we're not realizing what we're saying to ourselves. And let me tell you something. Our words to ourselves can be like throwing gasoline on a fire, or they can be like water on fire. And so maybe this is your thought. Man, I really suck. Number one, that is extremely generic. Often our negative self-talk is really just tied to our emotions and our fear and our frustration with ourselves. And this can be because of how we grew up. Maybe we had somebody that was constantly saying negative things to us. We've got to break the cycle. And so when you hear yourself saying that, you need to say, I do not suck. I am amazing. That may not be as good as I want it to be, but it's okay. And then be realistic with yourself. Can you do it better? Or is that as good as you can do right now? And if it is, then you got to say, you know what? That's my best. There's no need for me to make a big deal about it right now. That's my best right now. I can grow, but that's what I got. And you know what? That's pretty darn good. It's so important for us to recognize this negative self-talk and to replace it with something that is going to help you to grow, that is going to encourage you, fill you with courage to take the next step. And you know what? If you get to a point where you're like, yeah, that's my best and I don't think it's good enough, then listen, what you need to do is not beat yourself down about it. You need to do something about it. You need to continue to learn and grow. And if you're feeling stuck where you're at, it might be time to get a teacher. So many times we think that we can just figure it out on our own, but the reality is when we go and we sit under somebody else and we hear their teaching, we allow them to challenge us, we can go to new heights that we were not able to go to before. And guys, we got to cut off the desperate need for external validation constantly for what we're doing. Listen, I want you to hear something. You are a strong person. You have the capacity to be a strong individual, a strong creative, a strong actor. And getting feedback from other people is one thing, but it's another thing when we have this black hole inside of us that is constantly needing affirmation. We've got to learn how to give that to ourselves to some degree and say, you know what? That was good. Or I can do better. You got to get a little tough with yourself, okay? Be real with yourself. Say, you know what? That was good, but I can do better. Or that was the best I can do, but I know that I can learn how to do better. And so I've got to do something different. I've got to find somebody that can teach me how to do what I want to do. And guys, sometimes you just got to cut yourself some slack, okay? We don't have to be so critical of ourselves all of the time. It's important to be critical to a level so that we can grow, but we also need to be able to give ourselves some slack sometimes. We need to develop some self-compassion, and we also need to develop confidence. And I've kind of already talked about that a little bit, but developing confidence is so important. Number one, if you're working with other people and you don't have confidence, they can probably smell that on you. They can probably see that in your life. And that's not the end of the world, okay? It's not. But you are going to be so much more pleasant to work with when you have a dignified confidence, not arrogance, but a dignified confidence that allows you to say, you know what? That was a good job. I did it. People are going to see that and they're going to respond to it, and it's just going to make things better. And another thing is celebrate the successes along the way. Sometimes perfectionism should not be the goal. Sometimes it should just be progress in the right direction. Guys, trust me, I understand. I'm constantly pushing myself and saying, this was the deadline and I didn't get here. And this is where I wanted to be by this point. And listen, I am by no means a slacker. I work extremely hard. But you know what? Sometimes we got to say, I am making it in the right direction. I'm not where I want to be. But you know what? I'm making progress. I'm taking steps forward. And that's what you've got to do as well. So listen, guys, I need you to do some very practical things. Listen to your self-talk. When you start to feel down, listen to what you're saying to yourself. Write those things down. And then I want you to replace that negative self-talk with positive affirmations. I don't want them to be lies. I want you to think about them as investments into your future self, because that person is you, just not yet. And I understand how hard it is to remember this at times. And so I want to encourage you to do something very specific, okay? I want you to write down those words that you're trying to say to yourself. It could be on your phone. Put it someplace so that you're going to see it every day or multiple times a day, depending on how bad your negative self-talk is. And then I also want you to notice if you are constantly feeling like you need affirmation from others, or that you feel like you need validation from others, saying that you're not an imposter, that you really are good at this. If you're constantly needing that and you're not secure, I want you to recognize that. And I want you to say it to yourself out loud. It may sound silly, but whatever you're looking for validation in, I want you to say, I am a good artist. I do good work. I am doing my very best. I want to grow, but I am doing good work. And I want you to say those things out loud to yourself. And you can write it down in your own words and you can specify it for you, but write it down. And I want you to say it to yourself out loud. Because listen, there's actually studies that say when you speak out of your mouth, it actually interrupts your mind's ability to think. What do I mean by that? You're not able to do self-talk to yourself on the inside when you're speaking outside. And so you can literally interrupt that negative self-talk just by talking out loud and saying, I'm not like that. This is who I am. And so let's wrap this up, guys. I'm not saying that we have to fake it until we make it. This is not about being fake. This is not about faking anything. This is about envisioning who you want to be and then becoming that person. It's intentional. It involves work. It involves progress. It involves you taking steps in order to get from here to there. But until we stop saying, this is who I am, and we start saying, that is who I am, we are never going to get there. Or it's going to take way too long. You have to believe something different about yourself. One more story. I heard this story about a guy who grew up a long time ago, and he started working for a company, essentially taking care of their heating system. And he was asked if he had experience with all of this and if he knew what he was doing. And he said, yeah, of course. But he didn't actually know anything. But he knew something about himself. He knew he could learn. He knew he could figure it out. And he did. And he worked at that job. And he became amazing at doing that job to the point where a higher up actually recognized the good work that he was doing and gave him an opportunity that was way above his pay grade. That is the kind of tenacity that older generations have that sometimes we younger generations don't. I'm not saying everybody. I'm just saying that we have to take hold of that tenacity. We've got to do what it takes to get from here to here. And sometimes that takes us looking ahead and saying, you know what? I can become that person. I can do this, rather than saying it's impossible. I can't. I'm just an imposter. I'm afraid I'm going to fail. It's not going to work. What's the point if it's not going to work? We get ourselves all wrapped up into our emotions. But if we will say with tenacity, I am going to do this. Listen, it's going to get you at least going in the right direction. The rest is going to depend on your ability to keep going and pushing forward and learning and becoming better. So envision your future self and then put into place the different strategies that I gave you. Stop with the negative self-talk. Focus on learning and growing so that you can actually get better at what you're doing. You are never going to regret investing in yourself. Be compassionate for yourself and have a little bit of confidence. Yeah, you may not be able to do something right now, but you can. You can do it. And don't get so stuck on things having to be perfect or you have to reach this narrow definition of success. Celebrate your successes along the way. And you know what? Moving in the right direction is success. As long as you don't give up, you are succeeding. And so I want to ask you guys the same question that I felt God asked me. Which future version of yourself are you going to step into being? The one who really is an imposter and a failure? Or are you going to step into becoming the future version of yourself that is successful, hardworking, gracious, and skillful? And creative. And the list goes on and on. Which one are you going to choose? And when are you going to become that future version of yourself? Are you going to put it off till later or are you going to start today? I want to encourage you guys, start today. Choose today which way you're going to go. And then don't turn back. Phew, I need a sip of tea after all that. Listen, guys, if you enjoyed today's episode and you're a songwriter that struggles with writer's block, you are just having a hard time getting your creative output to be where you want it to be. If that's you and you want to be a part of a free webinar that I'm going to be doing here in the near future, I need you to comment smash down below. Because guess what, guys? We're going to smash writer's block like there's no tomorrow. We're going to be talking about using AI as a tool to supercharge your creativity. And we're going to be talking about overcoming mindsets that block our creative output. And guys, if any of that sounds interesting to you and you need breakthrough in your songwriting, please comment, smash below, because I want to help you. So let me do it. But anyways, guys, this has been the Reimagine Entertainment Podcast with Josiah Wright. I am he. And until I see you guys next time, keep creating, friends.